Well, all right. Let me go ahead and kick this off, folks. Welcome everybody that is joining us. My name is Ron here at New Record Day, and it is a pleasure to be able to kick off this new series, this case study series with Dan Wright from Modwright Instruments. I've known Dan for a while now, and to be frank with you, I can't think of anybody that I would be more excited than to start this off. He's been doing a lot of really unique and interesting things when it comes to hi-fi over the past few years. So the purpose of tonight's episode is to peel back the layers of Modwright. We're going to have 10 questions with Dan. And just like the videocast series that we're doing, Dan knows what these questions are. There's no gotcha questions or anything like that. So I wanted him to be able to kind of think about it and take some time and to prepare his answers. And so we're going to have a meaningful conversation, and I am excited to be able to hear what Dan has to say with these 10 questions. So, Dan, welcome aboard, man. We are pleased to have you, my friend.
Well, I appreciate it. Honored to be part of this and help you kick this off.
Cool.
You're doing great work, Ron. And yeah, let's do this.
Awesome. So jumping right into the pool, the very first question I have prepared for you is this. One of the things, and I mean this, one of the things that I love seeing anytime that I crack open Facebook is all the mad scientist shenanigans that is going on over at Modwright. I mean, usually it's just like a spaghetti mess of wires and crazy things cooking up. And so it's obvious to me, at least, that you're always coming up with new ideas, new amplifier designs, new stuff. So my first question for you out of the gate is, you've been doing this for a long time, right? So where does the inspiration come from at this point in the journey, and what keeps you motivated for that next design or to create something new?
Well, it has to interest me, right? And there's two ways to approach this as a business. You can say, okay, what does the market want? And you do that. You do market research, what's selling, etc. But I find the best results come from things that I'm excited about. And, if I'm excited about it, it's going to have passion. And so a lot of my decisions as far as what we're going to do next are more emotionally driven, if you will, than logically as a business. So what gets me going, a lot of the stuff in the last few years, number of years, has been more in the realm of tube amp design. And that started when I visited Jack Eliano a number of years back. I just wanted to learn how to wind chokes, and that opened me up. I learned a lot about tube amp design because I had kind of written off tube amps as being, inferior, quite frankly.
Okay.
So a lot of it is me exploring that in tube amplifier design. I've always enjoyed working with tubes when it comes to line level sources, and commonly it's just an idea, something I hear, a sound that I like, and a circuit that looks interesting, and then it's off on that tangent, right?
Yeah.
And the spaghetti wire comes out, and the tube and the power supplies come up, and we go to town. So yeah, vinyl, single-ended tube amps, push-pull tube amp designs, and new and innovative line-level tube circuits. These are mainly what you see me working on. I don't always make it to market.
Right.
But it's got to interest me, and it's got to be different, and it's got to sound fresh. It's got to sound exciting, and that's usually enough to get me motivated and, started on something.
Awesome, man. Losing Oppo, this is question number 2. Losing Oppo I think it was a big blow for many hi-fi enthusiasts, many fans. It kind of came out of nowhere from my perspective. And I can only imagine, just knowing a little bit about your model and what you do in terms of the modifications, this you pioneered so many of those Oppo modifications. So I can only imagine the impact that this had on your company. So my question for you is, how did you bounce back, and what brands are you honing in on as new modding opportunities for your business?
Well, it was a big blow. The modification, I mean, of course, I started 20 years ago just doing that, and it evolved into more. It is a revenue stream, and it's a non-trivial one that supports the whole business. You could have knocked me over with a feather when I learned they're going out of business. So that's been about 2 years now. Ironically enough, there's still a lot of those units and other mods that we do. So yes, it had an impact, but we still do Oppo mods. We still do some of the mods we had previously designed. As far as what I pursued after that, I looked for a replacement, and it was difficult. It's just changing. The market is changing. The demand is changing. People are not so much using disc spinners. Even video is being streamed rather than on disk. So that's part of a quantum shift in the market. I did find the Pioneer LX500 to be a very exciting candidate for modifications because it has a lot of room inside, which allows me to modify a unit with all power supplies built in, our own power supplies.
Got it. Like physical space. I'm with you. Okay. Yeah.
So we're able to simplify that, and also it uses the AKM DAC chip, which I very much like. It's quite a departure from the Sabre DAC that the Oppos utilized. So that's where we wound up in terms of a new mod product. But another thing that I started looking at, I said, first I'm like, let's find a replacement. No. Find a DAC mod. No. None of these things really work. And I said, well, what do people like? They like the addition of tubes to their digital. And so I've been pursuing and still working on what I'm calling the analog bridge. And what this is, in essence, is a tube analog stage you can add at the output of any digital or analog circuit. In essence, it's a buffer.
Okay.
The buffer's got a bad name in that the classic tube buffer adds tube sweetness and distortion, et cetera, et cetera. What I've been working on is a very high bandwidth, very low distortion, very low noise tube circuit, a unity gain, that can be added to any digital source, DAC, analog source, et cetera, potentially even replacing the preamp, because many digital sources have built-in volume controls. So this is an area that I'm pursuing. And in addition to the Pioneer mod and the other mods, this is a product that will come to fruition. In fact, I'm likely going to work with Fern and Roby on some of the external chassis design and whatnot.
Awesome.
So that's the next direction for us.
Awesome. Is there even a rough ETA on that product? Like when we can expect something like that? How far out are we?
I would say we're looking at Q3, Q4 this year.
Okay.
Because I have 2 big amp projects I'm finalizing for the fall.
Okay.
And after those are done, then the circuit's pretty well done. I've been polling people online, Audio Circle and whatnot. What do you want? And everybody wants everything. Pretty soon this turns into a preamp. Like, okay, guys, we got back and not the two, right?
So basically, you guys want another preamp, right?
Exactly.
Gotcha.
But in theory, a modular, a basic, starting with a simple circuit, very high quality circuit, with a modular approach that could expand from there, allowing a more modern system approach.
I love that.
Digital sources having their own volume control and amplifier and or powered speakers, etc. This is the in-between. This is the bridge. This is the analog bridge.
I like it. I like it. The Modwright Bridge, that's the name. Ron just named it.
Right.
That's it. Awesome, man. Dan, this question is really easy. I mean, you're gonna just kill this one. It's super simple. We're gonna be talking about, do capacitors make a difference? Oh man. So in all honesty, so one of the standout things that I do want to bring up, and I want to bring to light, is that I have noticed that in your gear that in fact you do have your own capacitors manufactured for you. So I guess my question is this: what led to that? Like, how did that come to fruition? And even though we won't, could we attempt to lay to rest in your mind whether or not things like this do actually make a difference? Does a capacitor really honestly matter with the end result?
It does. And there were numerous, capacitor shootouts, etc. Coupling capacitor, first of all. Signal goes right through a coupling capacitor.
Okay.
Two places where caps make a difference: power spike decoupling and analog coupling or signal coupling. And if I put an electrolytic capacitor in the signal path and I compared it to just about any film capacitor, I believe it would be quite obvious. Okay. Going between, say, a Solon capacitor and a Modwright capacitor, or a, you name it, dueling, Exotica, etc. At a point, you're splitting hairs.
Sure.
And the price performance curve goes vertical real fast. But the short answer is yes, they make a difference. I had an opportunity it's probably about 12, 13 years ago, to have my own caps designed. I was using Aura caps at the time, and they sounded very good. And I knew what I wanted. I knew the sound I wanted. And the samples that we received were fantastic. They were eye and ear opening. And they kind of defined the sound, our house sound from there.
Wow.
So you will always see our capacitors in our products. The higher end of the product, the more Modwright caps you're going to see. As I become more cost conscious, products like the PH90 and some of our other products, they'll be used more judiciously, right in the signal path, of course. Whereas in our higher end designs, you're going to see them used more and more. But they're not an inexpensive component. But they do add significantly to the sound of the product.
Perfect. Actually, a really good segue, because you did mention the old 9.0. So, vinyl is back. There's no question about that, and it doesn't seem like it's going away anytime soon, which is fantastic. So I'm a big fan of the PH 9.0, and I'll leave links down below for the review that I did of the 9.0, and it's still rocking and rolling in my rig, and I pull it out all the time, and I love it. So can you tell me a little bit about how the 9.0 came to fruition and what your design goals were with that product?
Right. Well, to take a brief step back in history, our first phono stage was the SWP 9.0, which followed the SWL. The Spencer Wright line stage was followed by the Spencer Wright phono stage, and Spencer's my son's name, 9 pounds at birth. There you go.
Cool.
Okay. So we're talking, the first phono stage was probably 15, 16 years ago. It was about 3K. It was a great design. At that time, it was too much money for some and not enough for others. So I vowed that the next phono stage we did would be either cheaper or more expensive. So the PH150 was designed. I said, okay, we're going to go big this time, and we're going to offer, everything that everyone wants: on-the-fly loading, resistance, capacitance, gain, stereo mono, etc., outboard supply. Let's make it sexy.
Yeah.
Full width piece, Modwright caps. Sky's the limit, right? Within reason, because we wanted to keep it under 10,000. But so we did that at 8,000, and it's a brilliant design. It has sold well. And those that are in the market for that, price of a product, know about it. Mike Fremer reviewed it well. It's been a great design. As more and more interest in vinyl came about, I realized that these days there's really two markets. There's, kind of the average, I say average guy, and I'm being relative, but and there's the higher end, right?
Yeah.
Let's just say 10-ish plus, and 3 to 4 under.
Yeah,
Those are kind of where the majority of the business is. So I said, all right, while 3,000 for the SWP 15 years ago was, a bit much for some, with inflation, under 3,000 is now an attractive price point. So that was the target. And I said, all right, let's start with the PH150, and let's just shave cost where it makes the most sense.
Yeah.
Chassis, easy, right? Let's make it simpler. Clean, but simple. Less Modwright caps. Okay, we use them in only the most critical places. I stuck with the majority of the schematic and the overall intent of the PH150. A couple of functions were lost. Capacitive loading for cartridges. Most people don't care. And judicious cost cutting in parts. Balanced is not standard. It's an option. This meant cutting some expensive Lundahl capacitors. So basically, it was very judicious cost cutting. But in the end, and I didn't know how it would turn out, right?
Yeah.
But in the end, I felt like we got 95% of the Sonics for $5,000 less.
Wow.
So, I've compared them, and yeah, the PH150 is a little bit better.
Yeah.
And if you've got the system to support it, you're going to want that, and that's great. But so many people said to me, "Man, I wanted your PH150, couldn't afford it, but this I can afford, and it's magic."
Yeah.
So, are the aesthetics a bit simple? Yeah. We could have made it sexier. We could have, dripped it with more aluminum billet, and it would have been a $5,000 phone. It's not the same way, right? So that's that's part of it. And that's pretty much how we arrived at it. And I'm just really excited about it. Some things I think it does a bit better than the PH150 because I learned a few things along the way.
Interesting.
So as far as where we go from here, and I know you didn't ask that, but giving it some more thought, I could either go down in price and do something at, say, $1,500, or I could go, $5 in between, or I could even go way high, and way high would be something like an LCR, inductor capacitor resistor, RIAA network, sky's the limit, $12,000-$15,000 phone stage.
Right.
And we can do any one of those things, and I don't know.
Yeah. Wow. I'll wake up tomorrow and the Modwright shenanigans will begin again.
Right.
Awesome, man. Oh, that's fantastic. Well, hey, so let's jump into this next question because this is similar in nature. So I'm going to read this exactly how I wrote it because it's exactly how I feel about this piece. And that is the SWL 9.0 anniversary, which I've spent the most time out of all your products with. I've had it for a very long time. I know it very well. And for me, I feel like it is surely an unsung hero. I mean, you've even mentioned, I think you coined kind of the phrase that it's one of the dark horses in your lineup, and I totally, completely agree with that, without a doubt. I cannot get over how open, inviting, and holographic that preamp can sound. I mean, it's really spectacular, Dan. It's a fantastic sounding preamp. Can you point out, I know this is kind of a tough one, but can you point out specific key things about that amp that makes it sound that way? Can you do that? Is that even a possibility to try to?
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, it's an all-tube design. Even the heaters are not solid-state regulated. The power supply is simple. Many of our more complex designs use solid-state components in key places for voltage regulation, plate load, etc. And they have their advantages. But there's something to be said for old-school tube engineering and keeping things simple and elegant. And that really is what it comes down to. The circuit The signal path is very simple. The circuit topology is elegant. The 5687 tube is a remarkable tube. And, of course, Modwright Cat. And it's the little things: grounding, layout, component choice, very low distortion, very high bandwidth. To keep the cost down, we kept it fairly simple. Remote volume and mute.
Yeah.
Manual input select. The steel chassis with a nice faceplate. It is basically very purposely built to meet a price point, to still be elegant, and to provide the best performance possible. And it's also the evolution of our very first preamp. So I took everything I learned from our first design, which is 16 years old now.
Wow.
My son is 15. And just distilled it, basically. And I said, let's, use chokes for regulation, and, let's do away with some of the more exotic techniques. And the result is it's just organic. It's open. It's quiet. It's dynamic. I said it's a dark horse because, ironically, so it's 2,900. The LS100 is 3,500. The 36.5 is 5,000. Then we jump up to the DM or the LS300 10,000. So setting aside the two $10,000 products, it's competing with the LS300 at 35 and the 36.5 at 5,000. Well, for 600 more, the LS100 is sexier, has more buttons and features, remote control, etc. Yeah. It uses a 6SN7 tube, and it's more romantic. It's more tubey.
Okay.
For people, it's wonderful. Okay. The 36.5 at 5,000 is balanced out, uses more sophisticated solid-state circuitry in conjunction with the tubes. But at the end of the day, while the 36.5 is very resolving, very fast, almost solid-state sounding, very, very quiet, the LS100 is on the warmer side, and not quite as quiet as the of either the SWL or the LS36.5. And SWL9 just comes right in between. It's the perfect tonal balance. Not too warm. It's not too cool. It's quiet. The feature set is simple. And people ask me, they say, which do you recommend? And I say, you know what? You're not going to believe me, but the cheapest preamp is the one you want.
Yeah.
A lot of guys are like, but I want balance sounds. Okay, fine. At 5 or 10,000, we have options there.
Yeah.
And then other guys say, what about the LS100? I say, it's a great preamp. But if you ask me, even pairing it with our $9,000 150 SE, which preamp? It's the SWL9 anniversary. That's the one I recommend.
I love it, man. Well said. I've always wanted to better understand, capacitance as it relates to a power amplifier. So in other words, the KWI 200 has 234,000, is it UF capacitance?
Yep.
Yep. Whereas the KWA 100 has 90,000 UF capacitance. What do these numbers mean in the real world, and why do we care?
Okay, first of all, a brief clarification. UF is microfarads. That's how capacitance in this value is referred to. The 200 does have 234,000. The 100, the KWA 100 had about 90,000. The 100 SE had twice that. And when we went from 22,000 to 27,000 mic caps, 100 SE all of a sudden now has the same amount of capacitance as the 200.
Okay.
The 100 to 100 SE also increased the number of output devices. And I'll tell you why, both those things. First of all, the amount of capacitance has to do with the amount of current stored. Think of it as a bucket, right? The more capacitance you have, the bigger the bucket of current you have. And when that dynamic piece hits, be it a transient or a bass drum or something, that amp wants as much power as it can provide in a split second. That 200-watt amp would like to provide 5,000 watts if it could for a split second.
Got it.
And they talk about peak power and these kinds of things. Well, power is a function of current and voltage. So voltage is your gain, and current is the horsepower, if you will, right?
Okay.
So if it's got a bigger current reserve to draw from when an instantaneous power demand occurs, it has it.
Got it.
If not, then, it depends on the power supply design. But basically, you're drawing current from the wall at that point, rather than drawing it from your bucket of capacitance, if you will.
Got it.
Okay. The 100SE also doubled the number of output devices, and that allowed us greater current handling, lower output impedance, more along the lines of the same purpose, to deliver more power. But in short, capacitance is about reserve.
Got it.
I use the example of a bucket. People can understand that. The bigger the bucket, the more current you have to draw from.
Got
when
it.
it draws from that instantaneously, it may draw it down, and then it recharges, instantaneously right after.
Just a little bit of an off-road question. If an amplifier doesn't have a big bucket, if it has a small bucket and it can't deliver the goods, is that going to lead to like distortion? Like, what is the consequence of that?
It won't have as much impact.
Okay.
Thing. Bass response won't be as fast. Control of the speakers won't be as good. Transit response won't be as good. It's horsepower is what it is.
That's what it is. Okay.
Your car's got, say you got a car that's 250 horsepower. Well, most of the time you're not using that.
Yeah.
Right? The speakers are only drawing, say a handful of watts most of the time. But periodically, instantaneously, they'd love to have 1,000 watts. And so that's what it's about, is that reserve of power, that backup horsepower. And without it, when you step on the gas, it's not going to go. The bass is not going to be strong. Transits are not going to be there. The speaker is not going to be controlled. It's going to sound tubby. It's going to sound slow. Not so much distortion as just not musical. It's not going to keep up.
Got it. Similar question. Input impedance. What the heck is it as it relates to a power amplifier, and should we care at all?
You should care as it relates to the overall system. Impedance is a form of resistance. Without getting too technical, impedance is dynamic resistance. And stereo systems are very, very dynamic things. The rule of thumb, ideally, is to have a low input impedance of the amp, a high input impedance of the amp, and a low output impedance of the preamp. 1 to 100 or thereabouts is typically the ideal. So if you have a tube preamp with a 1K output impedance, you'd really want a tube amp, you'd want an amplifier, tube or otherwise, with a 100K input impedance. Now, most amps, their input impedance ranges from 20 to 50 to 100K. The only time you're going to run into trouble is if you've got a tube preamp, say, with a 1 or 2K output impedance. A poorly designed, in my opinion, tube preamp could have a very high output impedance. Say your amp has a 20K input impedance. So all of a sudden your impedance ratio is 1 to 10. A couple things will happen there. If it's a capacitor coupled output in the preamp, you're going to have a low frequency roll off that depends upon the impedance of the amp. The lower the impedance of the amp for a given coupling capacitor at the output, say as a tube preamp. I say tube preamps because mainly they're the ones that have the higher output impedance. Most solid state preamps have very low output impedance, and it's just not an issue.
Got it.
When you're combining tube preamps, solid state amps, or tube amps, it becomes an issue. So it's ultimately that's what you want. Is you want the lowest preamp output impedance and the highest, or relatively, the ratio is what matters.
Makes perfect sense. Yeah.
Yeah, and if it's not done properly, you'll get weak bass. You'll get lack of body, lack of I don't know. Body's the word I like to use.
Okay.
A lot of guys like to use passive preamps, right?
Right.
They're sold to a passive preamp to an amp. Well, let's just say you've got a passive attenuator with a 10K. It's a 10K passive attenuator. all of a sudden your output impedance is 10K. And so the best you could hope for, would be 100K input impedance for your amp. You've got other issues with cabling capacitance and frequency roll-off, etc. Looping back a little bit to the Modwright bridge, impedance matching is critical. So a buffer or a circuit that offers a very low output impedance will benefit any system.
Got it.
In the case of the bridge, the output impedance is about 80 ohms. So, yeah, it's important, and a well-designed preamp, especially a tube preamp, will have an output impedance under, say, 500-600 ohms, 1 to 500 ohms. And you've got a lot of flexibility, and it's just not an issue.
Perfect. All right, so gain exists, and this was something that actually I didn't realize for a long time, and when I think I was talking to Vinny Rossi, and he mentioned to me this fact, and it kind of blew my mind, that gain in general, it exists both in a preamp as well as in power amplifiers.
Yeah.
And is there a trick or a rule of thumb when pairing a preamp to a power amp, and does it relate to gain, or is it more complex than that?
Not really that complex. Gain is about voltage level. And power, again, is a combination of voltage and current. Most amplifiers have about 26 dB of gain. Most preamps have about 7 to 11 dB of gain.
Yeah.
So total gain is 33 to 37 dB, somewhere in there. And that is about average and about enough to suit most loudspeakers. And what it comes down to is if you've got speakers that are, say, 109 dB efficient, you're not going to need much power or much gain. And with the fact that most digital sources have a standard output of 2 volts RMS, let me just try to just do the real simple math. A gain of 15, 1 to 15 is 25 dB. So 26 dB is just a little bit more than that.
Okay.
And 26 dB allows most amplifiers to reach full power between 1 and 2 volts RMS. So logically, you look at that and you say, well, my CD player puts out 2 volts. So why do I need any gain at all? You don't need much these days. 6 dB is twice the gain.
Wow.
So let's say your amp wants 2 volts RMS to reach full level, and let's say your source puts out 1 volt max. If your preamp has 6 dB of gain, you will have exact right amount of gain.
You're there, right?
You're there. Now,
wow.
7 to 11 dB, you're looking at 2 plus multiplier, and most sources are 2 volts. So you've got in excess of 4 or 5 volts RMS root mean square. Get the technicality of it, but it's expressed in voltage RMS. You have 5 to 6 volts max coming out of most preamps, and most amps only need 1 or 2 volts. So the preamp is commonly attenuating, oftentimes not even amplifying. It's attenuating, it's amplifying. Now, the reason you want that flexibility, though, is, like I said, the speakers. The speakers might have very low sensitivity. You might need more voltage to get there. Your phono stage with a 0.2 millivolt cartridge might only put out, half a volt to 1 volt RMS.
Yeah.
So in the old days, preamps were higher gain because the sources were lower.
Makes sense. Yeah.
I'm not sure what the tape was, but vinyl, it all varied.
That makes perfect sense. Yeah.
That's the thing. It's, about 32 to 33 dB. If you look at many integrated amps, you'll see a net gain of between 30 and 35 dB.
Cool.
Because that's what it takes for most speakers to reach full power.
Last technical question. Transformers in tube gear seem to be a mixed bag. And what I mean by that is it is it appears to me, based on what I've seen, what I've heard, what I've noticed, what a lot of manufacturers like to talk about when they're describing tube amps, is that the iron behind tube designs can make or break the end result. So what is your approach? What is the Modwright approach to getting the transformer or power section right when creating a tube amplifier?
First of all, there's two types of tube amps. There's single-ended and there's push-pull.
Okay.
And a push-pull tube amp is less dependent upon high-quality iron. It's more dependent upon quality engineering. Good transformers still do make a difference. And the reason being that a push-pull amplifier does not see very much, if any, actual DC voltage. It sees the signal coming in, and because it's pushing and pulling, which means that it's seeing both positive and negative signal, many of distortion artifacts, etc., are canceled out. With a single-ended amplifier, you don't have plus and minus signals going into the transformer. You have only plus, and you have full voltage. So this could be 400 to 1200 volts that the transformer sees. And that core will saturate if it's not designed properly. Remember, push-pull doesn't see that voltage because it essentially cancels out. So for a single-ended amplifier, the iron is everything. And that's why single-ended amps tend to be quite expensive. I use Jack's transformers, Jack Eliano of Electroprint. This guy's been doing it for a long time. And I'll tell you, it's an art form. And it's not, I mean, you can read the books, you can read the Radiotron designer handbooks. Transformer design, there's just so many variables. Music is dynamic. The reactance and the things going on in a transformer are dynamic. And there's many different variables all going on at once. People see a speaker, well, it's an 8-ohm speaker. Well, it's not like an 8-ohm resistor. It's an 8-ohm load. And without getting too complicated or too sophisticated about it, there's just a lot of variables. And with single-ended transformers, everything's got to be right. If it's not wound the right way, you'll have poor bass, rolled off highs. Capacitance, rolled off highs. Too much inductance, the frequency response will be skewed. So it matters with all amps. Single-ended is most important. You've also got interstage and transformers used not just in the power output stage of amplifiers, but in the interstages or in the gain stages. And there, it's all very important. Lundahl and Electroprint are my go-to for that reason. Very high quality, but it comes at a price.
Yeah, it makes sense, man. Perfect.
I'm not sure if I fully answered the question, but it's a complex component, and people have strong feelings about, no transformer is the best way to go. OTLs, well, they have their own challenges.
I'm glad that you clarified the importance and the significance in how it relates to single-ended versus push-pull. That was good. I'm glad that you did that, because I think that's going to be good information for people to know as they're considering all this kind of stuff.
Yep.
So awesome, man. Well, last question, believe it or not. So last question is an interesting one. And what we're going to do is, Dan, I'm going to remove you from your own company. So it's your last day tomorrow. You no longer work for Modwright. But here's the deal. So you're a customer now, and I'm going to give you $10,000, okay? And you can buy whatever you want from Modwright. What I want to know from you, the president of Modwright, what are you buying for your rig? What would you be getting with $10,000?
All right. Well, first of all, I'm going to hope that the new owner of Modwright's having a good day, and he's going to give me at least about a 10% discount, right? So we'll stretch it to $11K retail and assume that I can get it for 10.
Awesome.
Two choices, really. One, the separates route, and one integrated route.
Mm.
And one assuming a vinyl source and one assuming a digital source. So system A, if I wanted separates, would be, not surprising, the SWL9 Anniversary Edition.
Good choice.
2900, the 100 SC, 5250. And for a source, I'd either pick the PH 9.0 at 2900 or the Pioneer LX500 mod at 2500. Both these come in at or about 11,000. So like I said, I'm counting on the, a bit of a discount. That would be the separates, right?
I'll put in a good word for you. We'll see what we can do for you.
And the reason for that is all those products represent the best value, the best sound, for the money. It's ridiculously good.
Yeah.
The second choice would be the integrated route. And I'm going to, this is an integrated that I haven't quite released to the public yet, but it would be the new hybrid 225i, the KWH 225i, which will retail for $8,500.
Okay.
That paired with, again, the PH90 or the Pioneer LX500. And the reason for that is the new hybrid integrated will combine the best of our 150 SE amp, the same output stage, with a tube preamp and the controls and the flexibility of we still have it, our pure solid state integrated, the KWI 200. So you would have essentially a preamp, a power amp, full remote control, one integrated package with, a digital or an analog source at about the same price, $11,000. And compare this to the 150 SE, say, at 9, with the LS300 preamp at 10, and the PH150 at 7,900. You're looking at 27,000 roughly.
Yeah.
So for a third of that, you get very close performance in an integrated or a separate solution.
Beautiful. Perfect. I love it, man. Folks, that's it. Dan has knocked out all 10 questions. Dan, what a pleasure it was to be able to do this and spend some time chatting with you. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your knowledge and just being able to flesh out all 10 questions. You aced them all. It was fantastic to be able to hear your answers. And there's one thing that I wanted to share, actually, two things actually that I want to share. And this is not a self-serving type thing. I'm certainly not trying to put Dan in some kind of a weird light or anything like that. And he doesn't even know that I'm going to say this, but I have a very good memory when it comes to these weird, bizarre things. And a long time ago, folks, when I got my channel going, I think I was around maybe 2,000 subs. So I was still learning and figuring it out. I actually emailed Modwright and I asked for the big boy phono preamp, and I was like, "Hey, can I take this thing for a spin and review it?" And around that same time, I had emailed other manufacturers, lots of different stuff, never heard back. And Dan, you may or may not remember this. You personally wrote me back. You took the time to check out my website. You looked over my channel, and you were so incredibly considerate and kind. And not only were you considerate and kind, you actually were like, yeah, maybe I will, let you play with one of these things. And it was so long ago. And I think the only reason why it didn't actually happen is I think somebody else had it and you were logistically trying to figure out where it would go next. And I just, forgot about the emails and didn't follow up. So that's number one. That's a true story that I want to tell about this guy that we're talking to right now, that he gave Ron a chance way back in the day when a lot of manufacturers out there, quite frankly, were totally just blowing me off. So that's something that I really appreciated, that you took the time to check out my channel, to actually watch some of my reviews. You looked at my website, and I want to say thank you to you that you early on, you were actually taking me seriously. So that really is meant a lot to me over the years, Dan, for sure.
You bet, Ron.
The second thing that I want to mention is as we started working together with the review units, there was a conversation that stands out, and it's an important conversation, and it meant a lot to me. And basically what you said, and this isn't a quote, but what you were getting at is say whatever you want. Like, honestly, like you have my trust, you have my faith. And the way that you positioned it was so freeing. It was like, if you don't tell me something, like if you don't help me figure out like if something isn't right, or you hear something that is off and you don't say anything and you just give me this glowing review and we don't talk about it, well, what good is that for me? Like, that doesn't help me at all. And so that was so disarming and very different from a lot of the conversations as a reviewer that I do have. So I applaud you, and I appreciate that is, and now that I know you, Dan, that is part of who you are. It's just part of your DNA and your makeup, is that you just want to know, like, hey, how does this thing actually sound? Where can I make improvements? Like, do you hear anything that is, that we need to talk about? And thank you for that. I really appreciate it, man.
Well, if our gear is not doing what it's supposed to do, then what's the point, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I can make money doing lots of things, but this is a passionate business, and when you put your heart and soul into something, you want to know that people, that it's right, and that people like it. People buy it for the right reasons, not just because somebody wrote a nonsense review about it that won't hold water. And like I said, if something is not right, tell me. I can take it. So it's the only way we improve is by constructive criticism or not so constructive.
Yeah.
So
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, perfect way to end the night, folks. Links will be down below. Check out Modwright, modwright.com, and I'll have links to the reviews that I've done for Dan down below. If you have any questions, any comments, fire away. Dan, I invite you to answer any other follow-up questions that the folks will have down below in the comments section. If somebody wants to dig in a little bit deeper, I invite you to respond. I actually encourage that from the manufacturers, and that is how we can grow this community even more on YouTube. And it's something that is obviously, as you know, Dan, near and dear to my heart, and that's something that I want to see happen. So thank you for your time, man. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ron. I appreciate the opportunity, and I will certainly respond to questions.
Cool. Perfect. All right, buddy. You have a good night.
You too, man.
All right.
Take care.
All right. Bye.